generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back for another discussion on the Acolyte. We have our 7th episode out of 8, so uh, definitely a much anticipated episode to see if we're going to be setting up what's going to happen in the finale. We're definitely going to talk to you about what happened, what our thoughts were, and uh, just to put out and I'll ask you guys in a second too, just to put out my first impressions of the episode. I thought that the episode, like, it was entertaining, but um it didn't add anything. It wasn't super good. The explanations were kind of mid, and upon second watch, I was like, well, I guess this really wasn't that entertaining once put some more perspective into it, because on my second watch, I was thinking like with this Kalnaka fight, which is the thing that I thought was probably the most entertaining out of all of it, it probably could have been even better if it wasn't, a mind control situation, because I feel like that's why his fighting skills weren't necessarily top notch. Um,
Mhm.
but that's kind of my thoughts. Were at first I thought it wasn't too bad, but then upon second review, it was not good. What did you think, Austin?
Yeah, those were very close to my initial thoughts. But they give us a different camera angle of episode 3, is kind of my impression of this episode. Um, and I don't like that. I wanted them to fill in the spots we didn't see from episode 3 more, not show me the same spots over again, but also show me that Soul was there, and I didn't know that before. That was kind of what I wanted from this. Um,
Well, when you only have 8 episodes and two of them are kind of the same, like
mhm,
that it's not like you have 30 episodes and two of them are kind of the same. It's only 8. That's a
mhm.
lot.
Yeah, like I don't know, this just feels like a more fleshed out version of episode 3. It's so weird. Like this is the episode we should have got, I feel like, to really make us start asking big questions. I don't know. But they wanted to keep the mystery of Soul, I guess, not being so great of a guy, but he acted in the moment. You know. But yeah, I had pretty similar thoughts to you, Jeremy. I wasn't too excited by this one. The Wookiee fight, yeah, he was probably fighting at like 7 or 8 out of 10 of like where he could go.
Yeah,
Um,
I kind of wonder. Because, I mean, like we're saying, this episode basically was episode 3 from a different angle, and it didn't add much. I feel like what it did add, though, maybe they should have just ran with this episode and not done the episode 3, because so much of that stuff that was talked about from the witch's point of view is what really ripped this show apart. And I feel like if a lot of those things weren't discussed and maybe see how the audience reacts to this witch coven and then expand on it, maybe that would have put them in a better position after episode 3, and then just not do the two separate ones, because I feel like what we got from even the kids in this episode was all we needed. We didn't need all the extra stuff they did in episode 3.
yeah, definitely.
What did you think, Sarah?
Um, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot that was new. Corbin's very whiny. And I know a lot of people always pick on Anakin for being very whiny, but I really got those vibes from Corbin. I
A-
just
But
Anakin Jr.
it's kind of funny though, because like when people pick on Anakin, I feel like they don't put into perspective what they know about him, like how he was a slave his whole life, up until like 9 or 10 years old, and then he becomes a Jedi, and then now that he has the job of his dreams, all of his peers hate him. And so like there's kind of that reason why, he's in that mental state that he's in. Whereas Torben, it's just like, oh my God, I'm homesick, tired of this crap.
Yeah. Well, it had
Y-
only been 7 weeks, which I guess at that age it's probably his longest mission, so it might seem like a long time, but you think about like, even just like our soldiers today and stuff where they're gone for years, like 7 weeks seems like nothing.
But it's also interesting, like that's great that you bring that up because yeah, that it's an interesting perspective to put it into. But part of what I wonder is, what does Torben have to go back to on Coruscant? Like they don't normally bring their families with them to Coruscant to live with them. Maybe he has some friends at the Jedi Temple, but he's not supposed to have a loved one, so he can't have
He's
that.
got a honey. He's just like Anakin.
Oh, okay. Perfect explanation. I guess I can move
He's
on
got a
from
little honey waiting on Coruscant.
which is
So does
funny.
this tell us why Torben takes his life with that poison? Do we find that out this episode?
Not really. I
No.
mean, we have more reason to believe that was just killed himself for no reason. Um, but it is funny that we bring up connections to Anakin because there's some stuff later on too that I feel like he's kind of copying Anakin as well. But we'll get there. That's a little ways down the road. Okay, so let's just kind of start going through the episode and we'll talk about our thoughts along the way. We do open this episode with the Jedi. It is primarily the Jedi's perspective of episode three, the majority of the time. And we see that they're investigating this planet. And um, I have not read the books, but I read the one of the like inside the cover sleeves of the first book from the High Republic, and it's talking about this hyperspace incident that happens. And I'm pretty sure that's what they're referencing here, where they said something happened, and we believe that life, ceased to exist on the planet. So we're trying to see what happened after all was said and done. And so they're looking around the planet trying to find different things. It's pretty funny to see Kalnaka walking around with a metal detector. I mean, that's a very like our world type thing. I was surprised to see stuff like that. Like how Andor had some criticism with bricks and nails and stuff like that. But
Do
what
you
we
think there was anything to that? I know I've seen some other people talk about that as well. It is a pretty funny shot. Um, do you think there's like anything to that?
maybe they were looking for like if from the hyperspace accident, maybe some metals that fell to the planet and saw how they reacted, or that's just spitballing on them.
Ortosis.
Yeah, maybe there's some kurtosis on the planet.
They could be looking for anything.
Yeah, space coins. They want that currency.
But yeah, they know there's something funky with the planet going on.
Yeah. And so we start to learn a little bit more about why they're there when they're having their little campfire scene. At first, we'd hear Torben, complaining about having to be there, not being able to go back home. So we're getting that vibe that he's homesick. But the bigger picture here is that they start talking about how, think weird things can happen and maybe a vergence could be occurring here on the planet because of what's happened. And so they just happen to be looking on this planet for any signs of weird things that are happening because maybe that could be connected to this thing that is very important because we learn, from the original films that of the Vergence, which was Anakin, was actually very, very important. Um, how did you? So here's one of my questions about this scene. When they're starting to talk about this, first of all, how'd you guys feel about the reason why potentially things go wrong? is that Torben is homesick. Do you think that that was a viable reason to put a lot of these things in motion, or were you just kind of like eye rolling, like, shut up, Torben? We want to know what's the real stuff here.
Mm, not for me. That moment was really weird. His spontaneous call to action, without really having any plan or, I mean, the plan was kidnap the girls apparently, and then take them to the temple as proof. That was his plan, which seems a little drastic to me. Seems like maybe the witches were still in his head or something. I don't know.
He seems too old to be making kind of decisions like that. Like maybe you weren't ready to be on this mission in the first place.
Which is crazy to me to think about. He's 16-ish and he's making these kinds of random decisions. But um, I just thought it was so bizarre that when you look at the root of what all transpired from the episode, it was because Torben was homesick, and I was like, that's kind of weird. But maybe because this show is supposed to be for children, maybe that's why it's so simplistic. Um,
Well,
Well, it's,
they all have different motivations.
yeah.
Like Torben wants to go home. Soul wants to get a Padawan, it seems, but also save the children. And Dara is like, whatever, let's not waste our time here. Um, we either take them or we don't. Like it's they, it is what it is. And then like the Chewbacca speaks, Churiwok, so like we don't know what he's thinking. So like I don't know. It's weird that all three of these Jedi are not on the same page.
For
So
some
like I
reason,
understand that that was by design, like they wanted them to have conflict and fight, but I don't know. This is not the route I would have chosen.
was starting to bug me how much Indara was like, don't confuse this with what you're thinking, or don't confuse this with what you're feeling. Because she tells Torben that, I think, once or twice, and then Soul once or twice. She says it like three times within like 20 minutes. I'm like, do you have any
Dang,
other catchphrases? Or are you just a parrot? Like, what's going on here?
that's her go-to.
well, she might be the voice of reason because I mean, when I think about the Jedi, I feel like they should be kind of on the same page. They should be, having an idea in mind of what they're supposed to be doing. And, Soul and Torben are kind of going down this path of things that we wouldn't really be expecting Jedi to be so rash about. And maybe she's trying to, calm them down a little bit and bring them back down to Jedi level of, why are you thinking this way? It's not our way of doing things. Maybe an interpretation, but again, could be just filling in the gaps from Disney. But um, what was the next thing? Oh, how did you guys feel about the whole Vergence talk? So, like, again, it's one of those things where it was so special when we first learned about it and we know the importance of it. How did you guys feel when they started talking about the Virgins? Because for me, I was like, can we not be a little bit more original here? We're like, there's been so many things in this show already where I feel like the writers are stealing from what was from George Lucas's homework and then trying to just, you know, write their own story around it. And I actually really did not enjoy the idea of the Virgins explanation.
Yeah, they didn't give it a great explanation here. I've seen some explanations of it online and stuff. So the Virgins could be, I mean, it was Anakin, but it was also a lot of other times. And it could be like a place like it is now on this planet. It's just basically like an awakening in the Force somewhere, something. Um, so yeah, they kind of just like dropped this little bomb, right? It's kind of like a big like capital, proper noun. word in Star Wars. Like it's kind of a big idea, and they just like dropped it like it was nothing. Um, I mean, maybe we have more to see of this, but it doesn't really seem like they're going to give us any more details about this planet or the creation of the twins or anything like that, because they still haven't brought Kymer in. So like, I don't know. I'm just thinking about where the story has to go, and I don't think we get any more like of those answers, like the backstory. I'm still just left wondering. That's how I feel about the virgins question.
What do you think, Sarah?
I didn't, this is gonna sound really dumb. I didn't know that Anakin was the virgins, or like didn't make the connection between those two words specifically. So when they talked about that here, I didn't have any other notation of what they were talking about. So I was very confused when they talked so much about here it is, we found it, and then you telling me that the director said that this isn't it. And I'm like, what do you mean? They just found it. Like, da-da. So yeah, my opinion's not a real great one on this. Just because I didn't realize that that was a thing before. So it didn't mean a
Yeah.
whole lot to me.
I probably don't want to go into super detail just because I feel like that could be another discussion, but there's been a lot of interesting interviews that are coming out with the showrunner, Leslie, where she is kind of doubling back on a lot of the things that are being said in the show, which is bizarre. I did watch if you go to Star Wars Theories YouTube channel, he does do a deep dive into the interview, and it's pretty interesting, so I would check it out there. Um, but yeah, they're trying to bring in this idea of a vergence, which, in my opinion, seems like it should be more rare than common. And so I find it interesting that it's brought up within 100 years of like the vergence being Anakin Skywalker. Like the at least in my opinion, the most important one that I've heard of. I know, Austin, you mentioned it could be like planets or instances that occur. I haven't heard of it being relayed to certain things. So my idea of the Virgins is that it's pretty rare.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very rare. I only learned what it was after this episode. Like I didn't, it didn't even trigger in my mind from the prequels that it's like something that's come up before. Um, yeah, like I kind of watched some videos and looked it up afterwards, but yeah, I think I don't remember all the examples, but I want to say like The Last Jedi, like that dark cave. There's like something about that maybe. I don't know. There's some examples, or like the cave that Luke goes into maybe on a planet. I, I don't want to get into the details. I don't know them. So, um, but yeah, it didn't trigger anything for me right away. And like you said, it's very rare, and this is only 80 years before it happened the other time. Like that's not that rare. I don't know.
Right. So I thought with this being such an important thing that they bring up, maybe we're going to get some like crazy explanation about what's going on here. And so we'll have to wait for later in the episode to see if that even pans out. Um, But eventually, what this trickles into is we get to the scene from episode three where we see that uh, Soul is kind of out in the woods and he eventually sees the two twins playing and he follows them and then sees that um, is it Kirill, it's the mom, the one that birthed them,
Is it
uh,
Coral?
Coral, sorry. She gathers them up, takes them back to the fortress. We get that whole scene, and then this is when Soul first tells Indara, like, "Hey, we're not the only ones here. Something's going on." And then we learn that Soul basically tracks behind them all the way to the fortress. And instead of going through the front door, he climbs and scales the wall. So the thing from the trailers that we saw in the past that we were wondering about, that was actually Soul. And so he climbs this rocky fortress and eventually makes his way in. And so this is when Austin brought up in the beginning where we're starting to get basically just different angles of things that we already knew. And it made me wonder like how they filmed these because they looked pretty darn close to the actual things. But yeah, we're seeing Soul looking and watching and there I guess there was a couple of times I didn't go back and look at episode 3, but I'm sure that they covered this is that there were random occurrences throughout the episode where they thought they heard something, and so one of the witches went to investigate it, and we saw that that was Soul that was actually doing it. And what Soul gathers from all this stuff, because he sees, Mother Anastasia push these girls. He's like, oh my God, they're hurting these children, kind of a thing. And then he sees,
Well,
And that
I
was
mean,
so silly. Like, okay, she's saying your enemy won't warn you when they attack, and she pushes them down, which to a normal person would maybe seem like child abuse, but to somebody who is at the Jedi Temple all the time and they're constantly training, and you have to start with children who are younger than these ones because they make a comment about these girls being too old to become Jedi. How is that like any worse, like significantly worse than what you would go through to do Jedi training?
right, like how is the Jedi taking them any different from them being here with the witches? Is that what you're saying?
Right, because he's saying that like they're abusing them badly enough that we need to save them.
Right. Um, I think so. The very first thing Soul sees is actually them by the Buddha tree, right? Because he
Right.
sees May do the little force choke on the butterfly. So maybe the very first thing he sees is like a dark side thing. So that's why he's so interested. And maybe, I don't know, I'm making up details, but maybe he didn't
But
give
he
Andara everything. And,
but he wants Osha, not
right,
May.
right.
But does he know, I guess at that point, which one's Osha and which one's May?
clearly he
Yeah,
didn't
I
know
wouldn't
later
think
on in the
so.
episode.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I thought it was interesting with all that stuff too. Just the things that he was seeing. I didn't make that connection of like, how is that any worse than what you do? Um, that's kind of a funny thought. Uh, he does eventually, go back to his group and is explaining, hey, this is what's going on, and convinces them all to go to the fortress. And I thought this because upon rewatch, I was like, this is really weird dialogue. So they approach the door that the twins went in when they were gathered from the forest by um, Coral. And Soul knows, if you push the buttons on the door will open. And so they're trying to break in and they're discussing who's going to go in there, right? And Dara is like, well, I'm only going to go in there if more of us go in there, then they're going to feel threatened. And I don't know about you guys, but if anybody broke into my house, even if it was just one person, I would feel pretty threatened.
Yeah, definitely. If they just enter without announcing or like, yeah, definitely.
Did they even try to knock on the door?
No, but they said it was
Uh,
an elevator. It's like, why would you knock on an elevator door?
yeah, like no one's gonna be down at the entrance to the elevator, I guess. So that's the thing. This is like an old, they mentioned at some point that this is like an old mining facility. So that was the only reason I asked earlier about like the metal detector
Hmm.
thing was because maybe there is some type of rare metal on this planet or somewhere in the universe that they're looking for. Um, that was the only reason I asked. But back to the mining shaft. Yeah. So yeah, I think either way they come in with four Jedi. You know, they all have lightsabers, obviously. Like that's kind of threatening. I don't know.
I also want to point out, so when we're talking about this elevator shaft, I'm pretty sure that this is the same type of elevator shaft that we see in the Jedi series, the video games, because they use these kind of shafts within a lot of bases. So that was kind of a cool like little Easter egg for me to see. I don't think I've ever seen in any of the other projects. So I thought that was kind of a cool attention to detail. But yeah, they break in, they walk in, and this is the scene that we see from episode three, right? Where they're talking to the witches, saying that, they want to see the children. And what we get here that we didn't get from before is what is going on with Torben. So Mother Anastasia is kind of messing with his mind. What do you guys think of this scene? I've heard a lot of people think it's kind of weird.
It was kind of strange. Um, I remember when we were watching Angry Joe's kind of reaction to this stuff, and he was talking about how she was insinuating that maybe he wanted other things, and he's like, "No, I just want to go home." But when we rewatched this, it seemed pretty straightforward. She knew from the get-go that he just wanted to go back to Coruscant, and that's what he says the whole time. So I didn't really pick up the like weird tension that Angry Joe was talking about, but it was still strange to me how she could be in his head that much and still carrying on a regular conversation outside of that. Because when we see later in the episode, when they're in Kalnaga's mind, everybody's gone. Like they turn to smoke to be able to do that. So how is she able to have a physical presence and in someone's mind, but then later she has to turn to smoke to be in someone's mind?
Yeah, their force thread powers are very inconsistent. There's another thing later that's very odd that happens. But I had the same idea, Sarah. I thought that was very interesting that she could be in conversation basically with the Jedi, but also be taking over Torben's mind at the same time. I thought that was kind of
The one thing I wondered during this is like if she knows going off the basis that when she says, she can do like fulfill his desires, if she is referring to him going home, it made me wonder how can she get him home? Like if I was Torben, my thought would be, how in the world are you going to get me back to Coruscant? Because I don't think,
I,
have we seen any ships? Like how are they mobile?
but he doesn't know that. He doesn't know they don't have ships, and he's desperate.
well, and my interpretation of that was any person she tries to do that to is gonna she's going into their mind, right? To break their mind. So like she's gonna know their thoughts, their convictions. So she's gonna know how to manipulate them to get them to break. And that's what he did. As soon as he gave in, as soon as he did what she said, she had complete control. And that's what it took. So for him, it was like, I'll give you what you want, I'll let you go home. She just told him what he wanted to hear. So that was how I interpreted it. That I think like a different person could see a different type of vision slash have a different conversation. Um, but yeah, I think I don't know. It was interesting, I guess. I'll say that.
I do
We get
think it's
another.
I
Go
was saying,
ahead.
I do think it's interesting you guys bring up the inconsistencies with the witch powers because I actually hadn't made that connection. Because if you think about it, the like so when Torben's mind was being taken over, we could see that his eyes were changing. Um, Later in the episode, and we'll just touch on this because I don't want to go too far ahead. When Kalnaka was taken over, his eyes weren't black, were they? I feel like those were normal eyes.
I feel like his eyes are normally dark, so it would have been hard for me to tell a difference.
And I think that scene is, yeah, I mean, we can see the scene behind you. It's a dark scene, so
So, do you believe that um, Mother Anastasia had the ability to overtake Torben's mind and control his movements through that ability, or was that just her messing with his mind?
mm, no, I think absolutely she could have done the same thing. Like when she had control of Torben, I think she could have had him start swinging on the other three at any moment,
It's hard
basically.
for me to say because him being a Padawan, she definitely picked on the weakling because his mind was weak because he wanted to go home versus Kalnaka, who I guess we don't really know anything about other than the fact that he's not a Padawan since we can't understand his language. But I think this has to do with the power of one versus the power of many. And I know how much that's everybody's favorite, but this one it was just Mother Anastasia and nobody else, at least from what we could tell. And she wasn't in smoke monster form.
Right. That's kind of why I was wondering if it was different, like if whether or not she could actually control him because she didn't do what Coral did by turning into the smoke. But yeah, so then the rest of the scene basically plays out how we saw from episode three. There wasn't much of a difference where Soul eventually talks to the girls. Mother Anastasia wants them to leave, so she says, leave or else bad things are going to happen to Torben. And so they eventually leave. And then it cuts back to them being on their ship, and they're all
Well,
basically
they have that weird dialogue, and I don't know if this was in episode three or not, but where oh, what's her name? Indara, she goes, "You can't deny them the right to be tested for Jedi abilities with your permission, of course." Like, what is it? You can't deny them, or you need their permission? Like, it seems so. I'm trying to manipulate you to get what I want, but I really have no power, so pretty please.
I hate that line.
Yeah, that was kind of like to me like an officer sees you like driving a car, holding a beer, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna search the car for alcohol because I have the right to do so." It's like, what? Anyway, um, but maybe that was a bad example. I don't know, but it was just odd. It was
It's
really
just so
strange.
weird. I'm not, I'm more and more, I'm not liking her dialogue. Like, she's supposed to be someone who's super wise and leading the group and everything. And she just, she seems so, I'm the most important person in the room. You should listen to me without having anything to really back it up. Like, I don't know. I just don't like her.
Yeah, her intuition for what her fellow Jedi are thinking is like up here. And then her critical thinking skills are like much more like reasonable. I don't know. It's she's an interesting character.
I think if I were to make an example like what Austin said, I think it'd be like an officer pulling over saying, you haven't paid for your tabs. I'm searching for cocaine." Basically.
Yeah, this yeah.
It was weird and
So yeah.
still weird the
Um
second time.
yeah, that's the weird thing, right? We're seeing everything like the second time basically. So
But, but this time we get to see May take the test, not just OSHA
right. And May fails miserably.
It is
on purpose.
interesting. I will say, if I can say one positive thing about the episode, I do think it's cool that they showed how each of the girls uh, you know, tried to manipulate the system and failed. Like she got caught because she tried saying something before even a picture appeared. So she was caught lying right away. And that's different than what OSHA did.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that kind of I didn't pick up on it, but um, why else would Soul act the way that he did with May the first time, because he was so like genuine, like um, I don't know what the word I'm trying to use here, but he was basically being like that warm shoulder to I don't know, just trying to get her to join the Jedi, basically, just being every good vibe, just having them all her way. I don't know.
Very influential.
And I think Endara picked up on it, right? Because she's like, okay, we can proceed with the test. I think she saw that he was like trying too hard, and he was like, this is this is not going to work out. I think Adara saw it right away.
Yeah.
So we get
Was there
the
anything else about the test you wanted to? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so we get their tests. Like, I thought it was kind of funny. Sarah brought this up when we were watching the episode when Torben wanted to do a blood sample, and he's like, "It's not gonna hurt," and he like literally does it through her clothing. Like, how dare you put a hole in my shirt, buddy? I could have rolled my sleeve up. Um, so we're seeing the blood being taken. We saw, I think it was for OSHA in episode 3, so we saw that they were both tested. We do learn that. So let's back up here. So they do their tests. The witches go on their way back to the fortress. The Jedi are still, at their little camp. And Dara reaches out to the council saying, "Hey, there's something going on here. What should we do?" And they basically tell her, "Don't do anything. Like, do not intervene. Don't bring the girls back. Just leave it alone." And of course, Soul doesn't like this answer because he has this weird connection with OSHA. At least he probably thinks it's OSHA, and I say that because of what happens later on. Um, and so we get like this bang, bang, bang scenario of all these different reasons of why Soul should convince them to, go get the girls. We get the M count that comes through, and they're like, "It's off the charts. They were somehow split into two." And so he's like, "Oh my God, you guys, it's super high. We should go check it out." And they're like, "No, we can't do that." And he's like, but they're doing bad things to the children." And Torben is interpreting this stuff as, well, if we get the girls, then we can go straight home. Because if we get the girls, then we, have to take them to the council. We got to show them the awesomeness that we found. And so that's what basically drives the rest of the episode. And no pun intended, but he hops on a speeder bike and just takes off. He doesn't wait to hear what Andara has to say, is clearly the lead of the group. And so then they all follow him. Uh,
Well, we've got Soul following him on a speeder, and then Kalnaka and Indara are following on the ship so they can
right.
try to pick them up.
Yep. And so eventually, when Soul and Torben get there, they realize that what before they got there that the witches broke the door, and so they can't access that door. And so Soul is like, "Yo, I've creeped on them before. We can just scale this wall." And so they decide to climb up the wall and make their way into the fortress. Again, the other two Jedi are still flying to get their way over there. It blows my mind that they must have been flying at a slow speed. I would think that that's faster than a speeder bike, but I could be wrong. We do see some of the stuff happening, what is going on in real time with the witches so that we can, be up to par with the time frame and all that good stuff. But what it eventually boils down to is when Torben and Soul walk into this like little courtyard area and they meet up with Mother Anastasia and um, Coral. And I thought it was funny. Coral was like, "If you take one more step, we will do something to you." And then they take two more steps and they do nothing. They do have these archers that are at the ready to, shoot whoever.
But
And
nobody ever shoots, ever, the entire time.
what?
Nobody ever shoots.
Well, they do eventually, but
The
not at this
arrows?
point. Yes, it's just not at this point.
Hmm.
Um, so they're having their little discussion. One of the things we also get as far as the time sequence is the thing happening with OSHA and May with the fire, because we remember May locks OSHA in a room, and then before we just saw that a fire broke out. What we see here is that May was trying to light the book on fire that OSHA had been, I think, drawing in, and she was drawing different like Jedi symbols or whatever. And supposedly she didn't mean to set the fortress on fire. She was just like, "Oh my God, this fire is spreading fast. Fire is hot, so I'm gonna drop it." and then it falls and creates the huge fire. So then she runs to go see, or like looking for her mom, well, her two moms, and she we're still getting this interaction with Soul, Torben, and the witches, but what basically breaks their silence, quote unquote, is when May runs out saying, "Mom, Mom, fire!" And then I thought this was hilarious when Soul turns and goes, "OSHA." It calls her by the wrong name, and it does happen. I looked at it two or three times. Um, this is what basically puts things into motion of, supposedly what the Jedi were um, mad at themselves for doing. So Mother Anastasia decides to go into a like what appeared to be like a demonic ghostly smoke, and we see that May was starting to do this too. And so, from the outside looking in, being if we were in Soul's position, that looks like something crazy. Like, what is going on with May? Is she going to be harmed? He's already seen so many times from his perspective. They're like throwing these girls to the ground. They have this ascension ceremony that's coming up. And I feel like the words are kind of like when you're playing a game of telephone, you don't really understand what the first person tried to say because when May was explaining to the Jedi what ascension was, she was saying like you have to make a sacrifice to have all these things, play out. And the Jedi could have interpreted that as maybe the children might be a sacrifice. There's no other children here. Um, so Soul wants to make sure that May ends up okay. So he takes out his lightsaber and stabs Mother Anastasia right in the gut because now that is effective in these shows. Uh, and as Mother Anastasia is, coming back into her human form, she's like, P.S. I was going to let her go with you anyways. How do we feel about that? Was that kind of like a backhanded storytelling? What did you guys think?
Well, she
Uh,
said before, I choose to be mother, so like I'm gonna go with whatever she says. So we as the audience are assuming that that's what she was going to do. But what was with the smoke monster? That didn't make any sense. Like either you're defending your village and you're against the Jedi, or you're gonna let her go anyway. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Well, she was also like pretty confrontational in this little mix. Like, if she would have led with, yo, we talked about it. We're gonna let OSHA go. May doesn't want to. That's the permission we're giving you. Because Indara said, with your permission, we'll do these things. So if she would have led with that, none of this would have happened.
yeah. Um, I yeah, the smoke thing was weird because I think that's the first time it comes up, right? I think they do it again later, but
Right.
um yeah, she starts turning into smoke and May starts turning into smoke. And I don't know if I would have done what Soul did and stab first and ask questions later, but yeah, he goes right for the stab on the smoke cloud and it sure as heck works.
Which is kind
Um
of bizarre.
yeah. I thought it was a little bit too late to be affected by an attack like that once you're already a smoke cloud, but I don't know the properties of anyway. Um,
She must have failed on her check.
yeah, then the comment about like, oh, I was gonna let Osha go anyway. That was just kind of like, why? Because she didn't really give off those vibes really.
Right.
Well, and then how do you feel about Mother Coral's reaction to this? She just saw her wife, or what I think is her wife, die.
Yeah, I mean, she was pretty upset about it, right? She instantly kind of
She goes after Soul, which is interesting because he does deactivate his lightsaber. I think he kind of, in this moment, feels that he did wrong, especially after what Anastasia said to him. And so I think this is basically the rooting of later on where Jedi don't use their lightsaber unless they intend to kill. maybe that's where this is coming from. But this is where the archers come into play too. So the archers start shooting down at Torben, and he whips out his lightsaber. He's doing all these crazy moves. And again, this is something I really didn't like, and it made me roll my eyes because he does the Anakin move like 3 times. The whole like swing behind your back and then swing forward to deflect these bolts. And I just thought like, you know, that was kind of special to Anakin. We don't really see anybody else doing that move. I thought it was kind of a cheap thing to do there. Like maybe they're trying to pull at, the fans of the prequels and saying, "Hey, this is a nod to Anakin," which everything else in this show potentially is. Um, I don't know. That could me being just a stuck-up nerd in that scenario, but I didn't really care for it. Um, So Soul, he does eventually whip out his lightsaber momentarily in his little fight with Coral because he chops off the end of the weapon that she's using, but he puts his lightsaber away right away. And this is when Coral does her little smoke thing where she whips her, goes away and
Wisps
she
away.
yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. I was thinking of a W and I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
Um, so she whisks away and we hear her talking, and Torben is saying like my mind is blocked. You can't get in my brain. And she's like, not you. And then she goes after Kalnaka, which she needs the support of the other witches in the coven. So we see that their eyes turn to black, and supposedly they are helping her mind control Kalnaka, which I think it was cool that we got to see a Wookiee Jedi fight here. But at the same time, I'm not quite sure that's what we were asking for. I feel like that was a minor catfish in a way, just because I feel like what happened was they basically handed a sword to the witches, and they're essentially fighting through Kalnaka. So we're not actually getting Kalnaka's fight, like his ability of fighting in this. And that's what I think a lot of people really wanted. Now, needless to say, he is a strong Wookiee, so we do get to see some pretty cool, interesting things like the Force push. They still use that. He is whipping that lightsaber around, showing the strength behind it. Eventually, he does pick up Torben, like by the face, and smacks him into a wall. I thought this move was pretty cool. The one where Kalnaka goes to like cut him in half, and then Torben had his lightsaber there to block it. I thought that was a good move. I liked that. Uh,
You're
let's
talking about when he has them like propped up.
Yeah, he has like his hand in his face, and uh, he's like barely holding onto that saber to stop it
Right.
from chopping
Interesting you
him.
say that. He's barely holding on to it. I feel like he would not have been able to block that shot, but that's just me. That's not just me. I've heard other people say that. But it's a little bit weird. Uh, he's holding the lightsaber kind of funny.
It is interesting, like to think about that awkward angle, like kind of going off what you're saying, and thinking about how much of a twig that Torben is compared to the muscle of a Wookiee.
Well, yeah, like think about the rest of the fight. Every time Kalnaka swings at them, it's like a big broadsword, basically, like a heavy attack, and they're like knocked back by it, basically. So I don't know. You're gonna show us like just brutal swing after brutal swing, and then you're gonna show us like a little offhanded block. I don't know. It was. I understand why they did it for the shot, but it just
The rule of cool, I suppose.
the rule of cool. Yeah, absolutely. I would have rather had like Soul block it somehow or something, or both of them. I don't know, but whatever. So, anything else significant in the
Oh,
fight? He does get a force push on both of them. That was kind of cool.
I
How does the dog get down there?
should have mentioned that. So by this time, it's when Kalnaka and Indara show up with their ship. They're seeing that the fortress is starting to explode from the fire because those like I don't even know what they are. There's like the machining things from the mining facility are blowing up, and so they land, and then they are approaching this conflict. So that's how they get there. And then Kalnaka is, overtaken by the mind control, and then Indara is the one that comes in to nullify what's going on with Kalnaka. So Kalnaka's on the ground. She's basically using the force right up
Yeah,
against his face.
she's on the ground after he gets like scissor leg lock flipped to the ground by Indara. She does like a crazy move on him.
Yeah, it was pretty. I thought it was cool. It was like WWE and Star Wars or
Yeah,
WWF. I don't remember.
I thought it
Um,
was cool, but did I think that this character should be able to do this to this character? No.
right. It's like if she jumped up on a Rancor or something and then ripped him down.
Right, right. Like he's probably got 200 pounds on her easy.
Yeah.
I don't
She
know.
she goes to use the Force to nullify the mind control, and this is a topic of discussion I wanted to ask you guys. So she breaks the connection, and then we see all of the witches that were, going back and forth like this. They all fall to the ground, supposedly dead. And so this is some sort of mind control projection type. So this is what I'm getting at. So they're using some sort of ability, right? And they exert as much of their ability. We see something similar to this in another Disney Star Wars project. We saw when Luke projected himself to Crate, and he, was holding off Kylo Ren, and from the exhaustion supposedly of this ability is what had Luke pass on. So when we have in this show where the witches are doing something and whatever they did caused either some sort of exhaustion or the ability killed all of them, in this show, supposedly we're supposed to be believing as an audience that the Jedi believe that they're the cause of it, where I feel when The Last Jedi came out, nobody thought, oh, Kylo Ren killed Luke Skywalker. Nobody thought that. So I don't understand the discrepancy here, where why would the Jedi feel that they're responsible for the deaths here in this situation?
There's a couple different things, right? One is I originally thought that Luke had died from old age. Not just old age, but like that he overexerted himself for the age that he was. But I just looked it up and he was really only in his 60s, which is not that old, for what I was thinking. So that line of thought is out the window. But in this situation, I think a lot of the guilt of these witches dying is because if we hadn't interfered, if you hadn't gone in and broken in the second time around, if you would have just left those girls alone like the Jedi Council said, this wouldn't have happened and nobody would have died.
Yeah, they had many opportunities to kind of stop what they were doing or turn back or just wait for further instruction to take a different approach. And they just kind of do their own thing and it backfires on them over and over. I think, yeah, Andara feels the guilt, even if that's not what she was trying to do by severing the connection. I think she still recognizes that that's what happened and she feels responsible. And then Soul directly, I think, feels responsible. Torben, I don't really know why that guy's feeling so guilty, other than being a foolish um, kid and kind of getting things started. But
See, I don't think it's so much that Andara feels like she did it. I think it's more of if I had gotten here sooner, if I had prevented them from going, then this wouldn't have happened. It's kind of like Soul killing um Mother Anastasia. It's not so much that he was wanting to do that. It's kind of just like a, oh crap, if we hadn't come here, I wouldn't have had to do this. Like I put myself in a situation where I had to make really quick choices that were very difficult, and now look at what's happened because of what I've done.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and I don't know, maybe this is a good point to bring this up. So the people that get taken over are Kalnaka and Torben.
Corbin.
So those are the two that also seem much worse off in the present day, right? Kalnaka had um he had like
Yeah.
the witch symbol all over his house, right? Like
Right.
he was clearly scarred from this. And maybe Torben was too. So maybe both of them kind of had their mind broken, like this taking over their mind. Like, yeah, and Dara set Kalnaka free, but maybe he wasn't like, I don't think he went back to being Kalnaka afterwards, is what I'm trying to say.
I could see that.
It's a good connection.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just trying to pick up on things, but that aren't explained well. That's kind of the running theme so far.
That's what we're here for. We're here to explain things more well. I think our next major scene, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I think our next major scene is the one where Soul is trying to hold the girls up.
Hmm.
So we have from episode 3 the scene where Osha and May are on the two rails, like the ends of the bridge. The bridge is broken in the middle and they are combusting. They are eventually going to fall. And we see Soul run in and he puts his hands up to prevent the girls from falling. And this has been a huge talk all over social media. So let's hear your guys' thoughts too. Soul is holding the bridge as opposed to holding the girls and just moving them off the bridge. What do you guys think?
Well, he also doesn't say everybody's just saying May, Osha, like that's it. Why don't you just say like run to safety or
Yeah,
like
get off the
literally
bridge.
anything? Get off the bridge. Yeah, something.
Yeah, I don't. The scene, a scene like that needs to have like some tension to it, other than people not knowing what's going on and there being a fire. Like, I don't know. Like, there was no, there's no like a sense of urgency, I guess, with like you're saying, like they have all this time to talk on the bridge, when they could be like moving to safety or, um,
Well, I don't know
you
about
know,
you guys, but
and Soul's approach. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
if I was on a bridge and I felt like that sucker was about to combust, I would have ran, okay? Like, what are these kids doing?
Yeah, I don't care if I saw my sister 30 seconds ago. Like, I'm not standing on this bridge talking to her. Like, I'm going somewhere else.
Right.
But yeah, Soul's technique, very sloppy. Grab the girls with the force. It's so easy. I don't know what he's thinking.
And then when the bridges do eventually break, um, he grabs Osha by the hand, like hand in hand, instead of again just using the force to stop, because we've seen this before in Disney Star Wars. So it's
In
not
this
like,
show,
Yes.
yeah, so we can't deny the fact that he could have been doing this.
You're talking about Indara in like the first episode, right?
yeah, I mean, I guess that's like catching a knife, right? But like, if you're catching a knife that someone has thrown, is that really more difficult than grabbing?
Well, Indara did stop one of the citizens in the first episode. May had thrown a citizen over the railing,
Oh, you're right. And
and
she
Indara
grabs her.
stopped her before she
Boom.
hit the ground.
Full-size human being.
Yep.
I think one full-size human being is equivalent to two ocean maze. I think we solved it.
Boom, roasted.
They just did it for the rule of cool again. They just wanted the shot of like a bridge on this side, a bridge on this side, and there's a split between the girls. Like they literally are like thinking of the shot first and the script and everything else later. Like,
Yeah, because I mean, I could see the bridge is broken. There's a division between the two ideologies, and one of them, hear me out, falls to the darker side of things.
mm.
a dark pit. And the other one, goes with the Jedi to be part of the light side, allegedly. And then I think the rest of this episode, they're on the ship and they're just contemplating how to do a cover up,
Yep.
Yeah, pretty much.
and that's it.
No dark side tie-in.
I was
Well,
hoping we were going to
yeah.
get something from the present time. Something.
Well, what's the giant rush to get back to Coruscant? Like, I get that that base was like exploding, but they still didn't complete the mission. And why wouldn't they check for if May was a survivor or something?
I think Soul didn't want. So this is kind of my thought. I don't think Soul wanted her around. I feel like he sensed something going on with her that could have been an issue later on. Also, Jedi are not supposed to have attachment. And we saw the issues with Anakin with his mother in the original movies. So I feel like if Osha knew that May was still alive at this point, that could have caused issues with her training. Like she could have, once she got old enough, maybe even gone rogue trying to go find her. And I think they were trying to prevent that stuff from happening. My only opinion.
Yeah, it seemed like they just gave her the simplest version of the story that they thought would give her the best
What
chance of
mom and
moving
dad would
forward.
tell the younger kid what happened, even though it was a crazy family drama.
Hmm.
A lot of people just died back there, but don't worry.
Yeah, like you
They,
don't tell the kids that the pet is like buried out back. You tell them that they ran away. Like I don't know.
they went to a farm.
Yeah, just like
There's
that.
people watching this video now that are like, my parents lied to me.
Maybe. Yeah, we got some dirty Jedi cover up going on.
Which kind of bothers me. I feel like that's just so out of character, but
Well, especially for Indara, it doesn't seem to match her at all. Like she
yes,
wants almighty wisdom like the whole episode, and then, well, we got to cover this up.
speaking of all these like crazy back and forth with Osha and May, now we get it here with Indara. And she's supposed to be the one that's like the, I
Most
would say
level-headed.
most, yeah, level-headed, down to earth part of the Jedi. Uh, and now she's even going, bonkers.
Well, we have one episode left, and we didn't get Chimere at all in this episode. So not only do we have no idea what's going on with Osha trying on that helmet from the previous episode and what's going to go on there, we've also got Soul telling May, I'll tell you everything. And I don't know if that's kind of like what this episode is him telling her everything, but like in actual storytelling and not just him telling her. The whole showing, not telling it. I guess you could kind of say that that's what this is. And so, in a way, we got the answer. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the approach that they went, just because, we needed to see what was going on too. But to not have any background on how Chimere and May became a thing, how May got out of there alive, like we don't, there's still so much left, and there's no way they could finish this in a single episode.
Yeah, they needed to have something more, either like you're saying, talking about the whole Chimere and May meetup. Like, how did she even get off the planet? Like, did Chimere or somebody just randomly come over there and like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, if she's the only one left, how did she do all these things? Was there a witch that survived? Was there a Jedi that overheard something was going on over there and decided to go over there on their own ambitions? Is this how Chimere, like, was Chimere part of the temple and he was tossed aside and it was like, oh, there's someone out there. I'm gonna go grab them, kind of a thing. And that's what happened?
Yeah, maybe if the Jedi can sense this vergence in the Force, maybe the dark side can also sense it, and they also go to the planet and find the scraps.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, I still don't really know how this show is going to end. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be a non-satisfactory ending. I want it to be a great finale. I do. Star Wars can have a great finale.
They need to like double the runtime then. Because this one did have a longer runtime, but there's just so much.
Well, it's kind of funny because I was thinking about it. I bet they filmed the same amount as before, but all the footage that they salvaged from episode 3 and interjected here probably made it a little bit longer.
Yeah, I felt like we just got so little like new information out of this. It's a little disappointing. They didn't loop it back into the present day story. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I'm feeling like, yeah, I wonder what else she's gonna do with the helmet. If she's gonna like maybe we see the cloaked figure show up with the red lightsaber and they have the helmet on and we think it's Kymer the whole time and then the helmet comes off and then it's actually been Osha the whole time. That'd be crazy. Um, Maybe they do something like that, but I don't know. I don't know where this is gonna go next week.
Yeah, the helmet comes off
Presumably
too.
a lightsaber duel of some kind. Um,
Maybe she won't be able to take the helmet off like the mask and Goosebumps.
Yeah, she put it
yeah.
on 3 times. Now she can't take it off without love.
We'll see how the Jedi brush everything under the rug after the final episode.
I'm almost like I feel like I'm more worried about watching the final episode than being excited to find out answers. I don't know if you guys are feeling that kind of like anxiousness about it, but just because we're running out of episodes, it feels like either we're gonna be like a train hitting a wall or we're just not gonna get answers or any of the good stuff that we want.
I'm really tired of these short episode seasons. Like a season shouldn't have less than 20 episodes.
Yeah, get on the level of House of the Dragon people. What is wrong with you?
Or like, I mean, if you're gonna do only a few episodes, make them meaningful, Like episode 3 and episode 7 should not be, you know, basically all the same DNA as Osha and May. Like, you give us two different episodes if you're gonna make 1/7 and 1/3. Like, I don't know. I don't want two different camera angles.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I don't know. We'll find out on Tuesday, and I'm really hoping that we get something cool to talk about. Every week, I want something to be positive about. And I think really the only thing that I thought was really cool in this episode was just seeing how we saw the different dynamic with the twins and the testing, and that is not enough to hold up an episode. Was there anything
I,
else you guys wanted to talk about for the episode?
I think we got all the stuff I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah,
All
we just
right.
got to meet our quota of one cool thing per episode. And episode 4, it was slicing a bug. Episode 5, it was slicing a bug. And then or maybe I'm getting them mixed up here, but
Episode
oh
6.
wait, no, episode 5 was actually cool. That was the lightsaber fight. Episode 6, we sliced a bug. 7, we get a Wookiee fight kind of,
And a smoke monster.
and a smoke monster.
That didn't make any sense.
So I would qualify that as one cool thing. Yeah,
Nice.
we're hitting our quota.
Yeah. Yeah, we're hitting that quota for a $180 million project. All
All
right.
right.
Well, that was our discussion on episode 7. We are looking forward to discussing the finale and then our thoughts on the series as a whole as well. Just to see, is there something that happens with the final episode where we're like, we were wrong this whole time? I don't think it's going to happen, but maybe. You never know. But to make sure that you are notified about when that drops, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Drop a like if you like the video. And of course, drop your comments about your thoughts on the episode. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.